Hi, I'm Will McLendon. I'd like to welcome everybody to my presentation on Universal Resource Scheduling at Scale. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Although we're virtual, these conferences still cost money, and there's a lot of man hours and planning that's involved, so thank you to all our sponsors. ScriptRunner, DQ Global, Proximo, Redspire, Agilicis, and Hitachi Solutions. Thank you for your contributions. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently a senior consultant at Hitachi Solutions, and I have over 10 years of experience helping businesses all through IT. So currently my role at Hitachi is focused on helping our customers with this big push for digital transforming their businesses, primarily by using D365 or Power Apps. So I like to encourage everyone, if you're using social media, use the hashtag Scottish Summit 2021. We love to hear from you, so please shout us out. Hashtag Scottish Summit 2021. All right. Now let's get some information on our session. What can we expect? Well, first we're going to start with an overview of Universal Resource Scheduling, URS as we affectionately like to call it, some considerations when developing an enterprise-grade solution. We're going to talk about the customer's journey, what their employees experienced, and my own personal learnings. Just so you know, this is an overview of the solution that we delivered to a client. It should take roughly about 45 minutes. But we're not going to hit every detail. We're just going to give a high-level overview. But really, this solution is not a roadmap, because your constraints might be a little bit different than my constraints. My requirements were different than your requirements. However, we will call out some gotchas that you may be able to avoid. And we'll also demo change notifications that will really give you that bidirectional synchronization that we'll bring up later on. So what is Universal Resource Scheduling, or URS? Well, URS is the scheduling engine that enables scheduling for any entity in D365. URS is a separate solution in D365, and really any organization from any industry can use it. It's not dependent on any particular use case or scenarios, but really what you're going to see is that it's used to assign resources, which are a person, place, or thing, to any job or task. It's commonly used with other solutions in D365. For example, in D365 Field Service, we see it used as a scheduling tool to assign work orders to the closest field technician in the area. For D365 Customer Service, we see it used as a scheduling tool to book cases to customer service reps in the right department and right time zone. And in D365 Project Service Automation, we see it used as a scheduling tool to staff projects with consultants who have availability and the appropriate skill set. And with resource scheduling, you get what you see on screen, a wonderful schedule board. Right? This gives you a holistic view of everybody's availability. And what I mean by everybody, I mean those resources. Again, that could be a person, place, or thing. You also get to find out what their skill sets are, if they meet any certifications, and what the customer is expecting for you to do. So really, URS provides a broader view of your customer's needs and who in the organization can address them. So why Universal Resource Scheduling? Why URS? Well, you have an organized view that allows for optimization of placing your resources where they need to be. URS assigns the best resources to jobs and tasks based on that resource's availability, their skills, a particular promised time window that you made for the customer. It can be based off of BU and geographic territory and much more. And again, this functionality is included with sales, field service, customer service, and PSA. And also custom entities can become schedulable. So really, URS fills in the gaps we see in many organizations today. So why not just use activities? Well, what's the difference between resource scheduling and activities? Well, activities are events that are initiated by me or by my team. Tasks like follow up in sales, meetings with clients, sending letters, or making telephone calls, etc., etc. Whereas resource scheduling are tasks that go a bit deeper. They're tasks for me that somebody, a client, or there's a need that needs to be addressed or they want me to do. So resource scheduling will take into consideration again how much time, when's my availability, can I meet this requirement, can I fulfill it. It goes a bit deeper than just activities. So you may ask yourself, why couldn't we just use field service? Really, organizations that use field service, they most commonly use it in conjunction with URS. Remember, they're two separate solutions. So they use field service to schedule their resources, which can be mobile, to a specific location via work orders, and then they travel to the various customer sites. Now, since work orders are generally performed on site, URS is used to schedule the resources that have the closest proximity to the requested work. So in this case, it helps reduce travel time and in turn costs. You see, field service is work order centric. So that's work that is required for a specific technician to be done to a customer asset, some sort of inventory, and field services uses URS to coordinate those resources. It does this by using a combination of workflow automation and scheduling algorithms to set, an organization's workers up for success. Whereas resource scheduling focuses on specifically, systematically organizing your resources within your organization. And once you have that organization set up, that information can then be published and you can use it in whatever way is most proficient for your organization. They're two separate solutions, right? So field service uses URS to match the right person to the right place and the right time. And you can use it with any entity, really. You can make it schedulable. So what was our use case? Well, we wanted to capture leads as they requested bookings on a website. And this is a really valuable use case because online lead scheduling helps maximize your lead generation campaigns. And it facilitated by adding an online appointment calendar to your organization or your company's website in order to schedule these meetings. So the goal from leads is to turn visitors into customers. You need a way for them to connect with your org, right? Well, this online experience makes it easy for your site visitors to schedule meetings with text while they're browsing through your site. Our goal is to connect people to the right place with the right person at the right time. And a simple click to schedule button on the home page of your site can be a strategic call to action to get your customers or capture the leads that have been generated. So what was our scope? Well, since we were building for a major American retailer, our end game was to try to figure out what consumers wanted. And if you ever spend any time in this industry, you'll see that what they want is results and they want it fast. So we wanted to design our solution with ease and convenience for our customers. We wanted to give our customers options to schedule meetings, whether it was online with their computers or whether it was from a mobile device. Whatever our solution was, we wanted to design it with mobile in mind. So although the customer didn't directly mention that, we already knew that this was the experience that we were going to try to give them. Also, performance. Performance is huge. We were going to try to retrieve available time slots from their technicians. So each store had one technician, so that's roughly 3,000 people. So when we were initially designing this, we were thinking of directly querying the resource calendars, but that really wasn't built to scale. Hence why we decided to leverage the schedule board as the system of record for all available resources. So that gave us an enterprise solution that was ready built for scale. we decided to use portals. And within our portal, we had a custom calendar control that really took advantage of other open source controls. This helped immensely since we only had 3 months for deliverables. So we didn't have to create a custom website with a custom UI. The trade off from going the portals direction is that you're limited on the structure and the amount of customizations that you really need to give a truly super unique experience. So what we had to do is we had to do some expectation setting. So it's very important that you set those expectations with the client and the UX team before settling down on your approach. Now, before we started building anything, we had to continue to do our due diligence. And so when we decided to use URS, we understood there were a few key entities that were tantamount to our data structure. We knew that territories needed to be set, but also our resource requirements, they weren't going to be used in the most common way. Really, when building this out, you want to make sure that your territories have the assigned resources and your resource requirements can assign to your resources. The one key giveaway is making sure that your D365 territory structure is well defined. Again, we know that an effective territory plan can make a team more productive. It also can improve customer coverage, increase overall sales, and the phrase I like to use the most, it reduces costs. But on the other hand, an unbalanced territory plan and constant changes to a territory division really can hurt productivity as well as working relationships between clients and account managers. So changing your territory structure is oftentimes frowned upon unless it's really thought out and is planned for. That's why it's important to do the work on your territory management strategy, whether you're just starting one or updating existing one. But by clearly defining your territory structure, it'll prevent additional code, which equals more time, as well as making room for future software improvement tools such as RSO. So you have to have that territory structure very well defined. Resource considerations. Now, this is referring to both the front end and the back end. You see, during your customer journey, you can have the customer enter specific details to what they need. For example, what is their availability window? Like what time preference do they want to come? Where they want the job to be handled? Is it on site or can they meet you at a location? What skills are needed to complete the job? And on the back end, you can then use these criteria to filter out the best resource needed to fulfill the job. But you have to have your back end set up so that these criteria can match the resources. Taking into consideration that there may be some time zone differences, and that may be something you'll have to overcome, and that's a potential gotcha. But you really want to have all that information set up in the back end before deploying. Now, for our use case, the resource requirements that are used, they really again tell the scheduling system, hey, we have a job that needs to be done for our customers. Now, we didn't use this in the most traditional way. We had our technicians that generally had the same skill sets. The only differentiator here was that they were in different territories. So they were pretty much like stormtroopers. So as long as they were able to identify the customer's location, where they lived, we would be able to then match them to a territory and get them to the right representative closest to that territory. Customer notifications. Now see, once the customer is able to see the available times of that resource, he or she can then make an appointment or booking. So it's important to make sure that your schedule board contains the most up-to-date data for the resources that they're going to be looking at. or for your technicians. At this point, your business could then want to make the appointment. When they make the appointment, the technician could receive a link to their email. The appointment could appear in their inbox. But really, whatever information you give the technician, you want the technician to not necessarily directly interact with their schedule board, but rather you want them to interact with D365 or URS. So in this case, we had an internal link sent via email to the technicians, and the technicians would then click that link and it would direct them to that appointment and that booking. See, once they have that appointment and that booking and it's in D365, well, then they can make whatever changes necessary. You really want to make D365 the true system of record, coming from both the customer and the technician. So this will help avoid potential unnecessary loops that come with the software solutions, and it also helps manage the synchronization between a technician's Outlook calendars and your schedule board. The trade-offs for this is there's no additional steps for your technicians to adjust to the appointments that they receive. Really, once they get the alert, they can then go to CRM or the schedule board, make any necessary changes that they have to, and they're about their way. So now we need to get our bookings to our technicians. And I mentioned earlier that, well, in the system that we had, the technician would receive an email alert, but they also had an invitation placed on their calendar. So this really helped. So that the technician didn't have to go through the step of making their own calendar invites. It would automatically be on the calendar. But really, we needed to see when the technician was available, because the technician would then use their calendar to put in time off requests. Let's say they had a personal doctor's appointment. Let's say they had some vacation time, or it was a ad hoc, hey, I'm not available, I have to do something at 2 p.m. situation. So we had to capture all those details, and we wanted to make it easier for our techs and for our customer. So we wanted, in line with our own recommendations of keeping CRM as a system of record, we needed to make sure that there was some sort of bidirectional synchronization with the calendar. So we had different options. We could have them go directly to Microsoft and put unavailable time in there. They could have used Riva. They could have used the D365 app for Outlook, Power Automate. But we really had to keep in mind that performance was the key factor in our decision making. So what we're going to do now is we're going to consider some of the options that we went through. Now, Microsoft bookings. This meant directly interacting with CRM, having our technicians come into the system and punch in their available times. So this was the simplest option. There's also an additional out-of-the-box method using time-off requests. And with those time-off requests, you can have approval processes in place too. This way, no one can take any unauthorized time off. So, for example, if you had a technician that was going to take a vacation, well, they would enter in this time-off request. The time-off request wouldn't be valid until a manager manually went in and approved the time off request. Once it's been approved, then on the schedule board or in URS, that time is no longer available for that technician. It's visually represented when you look on the schedule board as that time being grayed out. So no one could manually book anything during that time, or when we used those custom controls earlier, that time would be blocked out. This was the simplest option. This was very easy to adopt. However, there was a gotcha with manual time off requests. If you ever needed to delete a time off request, for example, let's say a technician had an appointment and it was a 2-hour doctor's visit, that appointment then got canceled. Well, in CRM, we usually deactivate a record or delete a record. Well, with time off requests, even though you may delete a time off request, that time would still be listed as unavailable because you needed to manually update your work hours. So having our technicians manually update their work hours every time they had this kind of scenario seemed a bit daunting. So, however, by using change management, we were able to get the client to use time off requests for blocks of time that exceeded maybe a few days, because most of us don't ever really cancel our vacations now, do we? The second option was Riva. Now, I can't say enough about how amazing this software really is. It's a SaaS solution that builds everything that you need. It has the infrastructure needed to really develop a good internal synchronization system. Implementation was easy and it was incredibly manageable. It gives you everything you need for a truly bi-directional synchronization. When I say bi-directional synchronization, again, I'm talking about Outlook calendars exchange directly to DC 365 and vice versa. So it didn't require that our users would have to be trained on the software. Everything was streamlined and everything happened behind the scenes. So your technicians didn't need to do anything special. However, there is one disadvantage, and I'm hesitant to say it, but I had to call this out. It was the cost. Now, it wasn't so much the pricing per license, but it was more or less the additional cost when you compound it with how many users we had for the client. That was a bit extra. They weren't necessarily looking for the additional costs associated with the application. However, I have to say this. The Riva team is really good about working with you on the costs. So if cost is a factor, reach out to them and they will work with you. They're really, really good about working with others. And in our case, the client didn't want any extra additional costs coming from any third-party vendors. They really wanted to take advantage of what they were using within the Power Platform. Our other option is the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook. Now, this was great with cost because it's free. You already pay for it. It gives you that granular tracking and you have that bi-directional synchronization. You'll need to manually track your calendar events by, right-clicking and selecting track. There is on the calendar. There is, however, an additional workflow that will basically take your appointments and make them as bookings. So there is no straight path forward going from calendar events directly to bookings using Dynamic 365. You're going to have to throw in something a bit extra. But the good thing is that you don't need to purchase any additional infrastructure. The product is already free. There is, though, an associated factor with training that you have to take into place. Now, Power Automate, and you'll see V1, and of course you'll see V2. So the initial Power Automate what we created was going to take advantage of something that we call graph APIs. Now, graph APIs come in two flavors. The first flavor that we're going to consider is change tracking. Now, change tracking, it uses Delta queries, and by using Delta queries, you can get updated events, like incremental events, and then you can take those events that are on your calendar and import them into D365. However, there was a disadvantage or a couple of disadvantages. Really, the management with this aspect. Delta queries really don't have something like a wildcard mask that you can use, so you couldn't just ingest data from multiple inboxes at one time. You had to do one inbox at a time. So this became a bit difficult when talking about building it to scale. Also, the development time needed to to filter out what's new, what's current, and what should be deleted. That was a bit much in implementation time, since it wasn't really built to scale. You would have to then implement and deploy in a very structured way, and that added additional time, which incurred additional costs for the client if we went down that path. However, there was a second version to Power Automate. Now, this one, it used Graph API as well, but it used change notifications. This is this will give you updates. You make a subscription to an inbox, and this will give you updates anytime that calendar is updated. It's very scalable. The price is very reasonable, and it's very fast. You have to make sure that your subscriptions are updated every 3 days, and it'll get you the most current and updated or deleted information from that calendar. The logic would need to include, when creating a Power Automate, you need to have your logic include methods for filtering based off of event IDs or Exchange event IDs. You could even have them tracked in CRM with new or upcoming events. So there are different methods that you can use when developing your Power Automate. I would recommend looking up Antti Pajuin. He has a very good article about it, and he did a lot of legwork. So the disadvantage for this, however, though, was integration. Again, Graph is a wonderful tool, but again, it doesn't necessarily have like a wildcard mask. But using change notifications, you can overcome some of these obstacles. And customization. The information that you get from Exchange is what you get. I know the Microsoft team is working on adding additional values to the JSON that you receive back from the Exchange. So I'm looking forward to seeing that in the coming days. But in this case, the main disadvantages were ease of integration and customization. So now we're ready to demo. What we're going to demo is Outlook to D365. We're going to use those Power Automates that we talked about. We're going to use change notifications and change tracking. So as we say here in the States, what's in the sauce? Well, in our demo, what you're really going to see are Graph APIs in work. Now they have two variations. You can use change tracking or change notifications. As mentioned previously, change tracking, what it'll do is it'll give you a full snapshot of the inbox along with incremental updates. The only challenge with that is that you're going to have to request, using that next link, you're going to have to request those incremental updates. With change notifications, though, you're going to get updates whether an item has been created, whether it's been updated, or whether it's been deleted. One of the nuances with change notifications that I found to be very challenging is when subscribing using updates. When you subscribe using updates, it acts like a catch-all, meaning that if an item has been created or deleted, the system is then triggered and you'll get a notification. So updates is really like a giant catch-all. For the purposes of the demo, because I want to show you guys the data that you're going to see, we're going to leverage Cosmos DB. You can feel free to use it in your production environment. It is incredibly fast, and I have no problems or no complaints with it. Microsoft has a bunch of offerings, so when testing or when demoing these, I would recommend that you take advantage of any one of these offerings. So that's enough of me talking. Let me show you the demo. So now we're going to demo change notifications. So what we want to see here is when I create an event in my Outlook calendar, what's going to happen is that change notifications is going to notify our webhook based off of the subscription type. I'll take that notification, run it through Power Automate. Power Automate will then take it, dump it into Cosmos DB. We're going to examine some of the information in Cosmos DB, and then from Cosmos it's going to push it to our schedule board. So we should see our event. Now keep in mind, earlier there were 3 different types of subscriptions that you can make. You can make a create, update, and delete. With create, it's only going to be concerned about new items that are created in your calendar. So let's create an item. We're going to make this a doctor's appointment. And we're going to make it a 3-hour doctor appointment. Okay, I'm going to click save. Now what's going on in the background? Remember, since we subscribed using Create, it's going to look at your calendar and it refers to these events in the calendar as items. So when there's a new item in your collection or in your calendar, so to speak, that change notification is going to alert your webhook. Let the webhook know, and the webhook's going to push it to Power Automate, and it's going to process it with some magic in the background. Like I said, push it to Cosmos DB, and we should then see our information. Now, here it is. We see we have the ID. Now, what is that? Well, in your calendar, every event is going to be tagged with an ID. This is the same with your email messages as well. There's a unique ID across multiple mailboxes that's associated via Exchange. It then gives you your change key. Now, your change key is important. That's the way Exchange knows, hey, an event has been changed. If that change key is different than the one that was previously issued, hey, it knows that it changed. If it's the same, then it doesn't say it's changed. So your change key is a way for you to notify what's changed. Look at the action. Now, the action here, I changed this JSON. I call it action. I should have called it subscription, but you get the point. It's the same subscription that we used, or action that the subscription used. So it's created. You noticed here that it also references the subject line. There's also other pieces of JSON that you can have in this message. You can have the description, start and end dates. Anything that you see in your Outlook calendar, you can get in this JSON. Now let's look at our schedule board. We should see the event. We see that it was pushed to our schedule board. It's at the right times, 8 to 11. We also see that there was a bookable resource booking record that was created. And this is what the system uses. This is what tells, hey, the schedule board, there's information that needs to be posted there. Now let's go ahead and let's change it. Let's change the appointment and let's move it to Thursday. Now remember, I also subscribed using updates, so it should catch this update. Let's make this a lunch appointment. Okay, and nobody does lunch at 8 a.m. but we like to eat, so we're going to do it at 11 a.m. And let's make it a big lunch. We're going to change the date to Thursday. We're going to say save. Now, since we subscribe using updates, there is again something I want to say. I called this out before, but I'll re-say it. When you use updates, it means any update to the calendar. Now, that can mean creations, that can mean events that are created and events that are deleted. It's more or less thinking of it from a collection. Now, when you update a collection, this subscription will fire off and say, hey, this item was changed. In our Power Automate, though, we have some magic running in the background that differentiates it if it's a duplicate or if it was previously entered. You'll need to add that logic in your Power Automate as well. If we go to Cosmos and we look at our record, we see that our ID, all those characters, have basically stayed the same. The change key, however, is the only thing that really, the change key and the action are what was updated. This change key is different. The action is tagged based off of the subscription, and we see that it used update. And we see that the subject, lunch appointment with Chuck and Vin Bulmer, are also added. Again, you can get other details in your JSON. Start, end dates, it's up to you. But if we look at our schedule board and we go to the date that was requested, we see a Thursday from 11 to 4. That's our lunchtime. Now let's go back and also would like to call out that the record itself, the start and end times were changed in the bookable resource booking section as well. So let's go back and let's delete this appointment. We're no longer having lunch. We're back at square zero. Now, what should happen? Well, you already know. The system, knowing that we already subscribed to delete, should tag this event as deleted. Keep track of the event ID, and this should be removed off the schedule board. Let's see if that happened. There you go. With the refresh, we see that it's no longer there. We go back to Cosmos. We refresh our data at Cosmos as well. Yep. And we see that the action is marked as delete. And that's the data that's been kept. Let's demo Delta queries. So change tracking is very similar to how we ran backups in the past. So you remember in the past what we would do for backups is we would run a full at the beginning of the week or the month, and then we would run incrementals depending on the size of your organization. Well, the same principle is used for change tracking. What happens is you make your initial query from your Power Automate. In this case, you run your initial query, and then Exchange in turn hands you back a skip token. Now you're going to save this skip token and you're going to use it in the future every time you need an incremental update. So you can already see that you're going to need some sort of system in place to track the skip token. Now, once you use that skip token the first time, because you just got it, you use it again for your first set of incrementals, the system is then going to hand you back another skip token. You're going to need to keep track of it. It's going to be different. So for every time you make a request, it's going to keep handing you back these tokens. You're going to need them for your incremental changes. Now, you're also going to need a system that's going to run this periodically through the day. As when you make a change in your Exchange calendars or you add an event, it's not going to know because it's not going to notify you. You're the one that's going to have to initiate the request. So keep that in mind when developing your solution. But in this case, we're going to create an appointment. We're going to pick up the kids. Right. And now our Power Automate has been triggered. And what we want to see here is we want to see that our information is grabbed from our calendar. The system knows that this is a new event. Through some logic in my Power Automate, it is able to look to see if there's any previously created bookable resource records, and it'll also know how to handle that data once it's been received. It'll also give you information such as change tokens like we've seen before. So let's go ahead and look at Cosmos. Okay. And we're able to see that our event is here, right? We see the subject is pick up the kids. That's what we did. We see we get a change key like we did with change notifications. And we also have an ID similar to the ones that we would receive when we do change notifications. These are all things that'll be consistent whether you use change notifications or change tracking. These are items that you will always receive. I also added in the start and end time. Now that's something you'll also receive when you query using Graph via change notifications or change tracking. Let's go to our schedule board, and we should see on the 8th, let's refresh it. There we go. We see that our calendar is up to date. Now when an operator sees this, they know that, okay, I can't book him there because he has an appointment. And we also see that through our bookable resource bookings, the record has also been created. Now what we want to do is we want to make an update. We want to not pick up the kids on Monday, but let's pick them up on Wednesday. And why don't we just change this as, let's do a doctor appointment. Let's say this is a doctor appointment. And we're going to do 11 to 2. All right. Now, here's where it's a bit fun. Since we're not using change notifications, Exchange is not alerting D365 that there has been a change. You have to run your Power Automate, have it on a reoccurring job. When it makes this query using the skip token that I received previously, and I'll show you once I make this query what a skip token looks like, it'll then know through the logic in the Power Automate that this was a previously created event. It doesn't need to create a new one, but it needs to update it with the current time. So let's go take a look at that. Let's refresh. Okay. And we see that our dates have changed. It's now on the 10th and from 1600 to 1900. Also, we see that it's a doctor appointment for Emily. And we see that the change key was also updated and changed. Let's take a look at what a skip token looks like. If I go to this user table here, let me refresh my data. Okay, you'll see that this delta key here contains the link that I need to use in my GET requests to get those incremental changes. So you need to keep track of this, okay? You need to keep track of that in some sort of table. Now, going back to this item here, we'll see that very similar data. Nothing's changed. Start, end time, the change key is changed. Let's go to our schedule board and let's see if the system has been, if it's been updated. Let's give it a refresh. This appointment should move to the 10th. And it did. It moved to the 10th. We also see on our bookable resource bookings that the times were reflected along with the date. And we see that our created on date is there. So let's delete this event. Now, let's see how the system reacts. We're going to run our Power Automate. And so what should happen then is on the schedule, in the schedule board, that record should no longer be there. And that's exactly what happened. It deleted it. And you'll see that the reason here is listed as deleted. Although the change key wasn't changed, the ID stayed the same, and the reason is listed here as delete. And we go back to our resource booking record. You'll see here that the record is no longer present. So, what were my personal learnings from this project? Well, normally I've always associated resource scheduling with field service, but from my learnings in this project, I got an opportunity to look a lot deeper and see resource scheduling for what it really is. There are two different situations and two different solutions that you can use for many different use cases. Also, with developing bidirectional sync, there are a plethora of viable solutions. Graph API, it'll get you your changes, but tracking is another story, right? So we had to do our research when looking at the different offerings. Also, nothing wrong with using different different data sources like Cosmos DB. It's great. It's wonderful. If you want to use it to compare jobs or events like you would in SQL, you have that ability as well. Microsoft has several different offerings that you can use to make the transition by using Graph a lot more feasible. All in all, it was a wonderful experience, and you realize how many tools that you have available to you by using the Power Platform. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for staying for my demo. I want to take this time to let everyone know that my presentation will be available 14 days or 2 weeks after the Scottish Summit. Feel free again to reach out to us at hashtag Scottish Summit 2021. Thank you again, and look forward to seeing you later.